Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's Chamber Check-In webinar. Today, joining us, we have Sarah DeLoach, and she is with Compass Counseling. She is going to be presenting on finding balance in a global pandemic today. We are going to take questions throughout the presentation, so you'll see a Q&A button toward the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll address those at the end. So welcome this morning, Sarah. Sarah earned a bachelor's degree in social work and communication studies through Western Kentucky University. She went on to complete her master's degree in social work from Western Kentucky University in 2012. She is seasoned working with children, adolescents, adults, and families in many different settings, from in-home to outpatient. She is passionate in helping others develop skills to manage their emotions and to build a life worth living. Sarah is trained in full dialectical behavioral therapy, as well as informed DBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, solution-focused treatment, mindfulness, relaxation techniques, and many other evidence-based clinical treatments. Her clinical experience includes treating depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, mood disorders, personality disorders, extensively with borderline personality disorder, and many other personal and interpersonal related issues. Sarah also offers therapy centered on Christian-based approaches and values when desired. Sarah DeLoach practices in Owensboro at Compass Counseling. Welcome today, Sarah.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you to the Owensboro Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to share with you guys. I'm excited about this topic. I think most of us, all of us have been affected in one way or another. So I'm looking forward to just sharing some common ways that we are in this together, and then some tips to find that balance. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. So I have titled my presentation, Finding Balance in a Global Pandemic, because I think that is exactly what we need, is balance. So we are experiencing a lot of changes. Some we can control, but most we can't. So we really want to focus on finding balance, not avoiding or stopping what is going on, because that is not typically possible. And it's definitely not possible in this scenario we find ourselves in. So what to expect, some things I plan to share with you guys today. First, just commonly experienced changes due to the national shutdown. Commonly shared thoughts and fears due to the recent changes in our society, our home, and our workplace. Tools for finding balance mentally and emotionally, physically, and also socially. And then when to seek other supports. So some major changes that I am seeing and I'm hearing from people that we are experiencing in working from home is that we may be experiencing a loss of income or a reduced income, and then a lot of times our benefits are attached to that. A lot of us are fortunate to where our income may not have changed, but there are a lot of people out there who are experiencing that. So I heard that our unemployment rate is at an all-time high since the Great Depression. So that speaks volumes, I believe. Also working from home, there are numerous distractions, or what we would call noise, around our house that may interfere with our job performance. So with the changes to the coronavirus, most of us have lost our childcare. So school is no longer in session, and we've gotten word recently that they will not go back through the remainder of this school year in the state of Kentucky. A lot of us, our spouses, may also be working from home. So not only has our environment changed from going from our workspace, our office space, to now working from home and having to adjust in that way, but maybe our entire family now may be sharing that same space during the work day. We are also, a lot of us are experiencing going from working parents to now working and homeschooling parents. So we've been given the task of facilitating and instructing our students, our kiddos, on their education and completing worksheets. I personally have a kindergartner, and that alone has been very challenging, just to get him to complete his work and stay focused. So not only are we experiencing those distractions and that noise, but our kiddos are as well, which poses an extra pressure for us, I believe. And then, of course, housework and chores. So when we're at home, we may feel this tension or this pull to split our time or split our focus between working, but then also because we are home, we feel that we should make ourselves available to completing housework and chores, when if we were at work, like what would be typical, we would not feel that tension. So a lot of us are experiencing that as well. And then on a more tangible level, there are just technical adjustments and technical issues. So there's a lack of in-person contact and communication, whether that's between us and our clients or patients, customers, or even just that in-person contact that we get with our coworkers and our colleagues. And then because of that, we're having to connect via web or through the phone. And so really tangibly, something I personally have come across with telehealth is poor or limited internet strength or access even. Some clients I have found who live maybe in more rural areas who do not have internet or who do not have great internet supports. We've had to our sessions have been interrupted, and that's just a part of it. So those are some pretty big adjustments in working from home. There's also been one of the major adjustments, I think, for most of us, aside from how our work has changed, is just that loss of social connection. So the term that we're hearing is practicing social distancing. So we've been encouraged to keep at least 6 to 10 feet of distance to limit the spread of the virus. We've also been encouraged to not be a part of or not gather with a group of larger than 10 people at a time. So this has changed just a lot of family gatherings, church gatherings, or just anything social in that aspect that has had a big impact for us. And then we've also been encouraged to stick with only being around members of our immediate household. And so for some people who live alone or who do not have access to just being around other people in general, this is a really big challenge, I think, for our mood and for our mental health. The loss of social connection is also causing just us to feel that change in being emotionally connected to other people. And then a loss of physical affection and connection, of course. And so not only are most of us missing that or have felt that change in some way, I'm thinking of not only people who live alone, but also, just for an example, maybe our parents and grandparents. I know my mom has expressed and experienced really feeling grief over not getting to just hug her grandbabies. So that is a real part of it as well, that I think that we don't realize until we're not allowed to have that experience with those that we love and care about. So now I want to go on to looking at changes in our mood. So going from working from home, being able to go to TJ Maxx or Target just to walk around or just to get a break from our house or whatever stressors that we have, that has changed in a big way. And so this has definitely affected our mood. The biggest ways that I'm hearing from other people that this has affected mood is through depressive moods or anxious moods. So I want to look at what those look like, how we can identify those things in ourselves and those that we love. So first, with a depressive mood, or what we hear as depression, I like to call this, or to think of this, kind of as our body kicking into like a low drive or an under drive. So it kind of feels like things are really slow motion for us, and it's hard to get out of that. So we may experience a loss of motivation, a loss of energy, and then a loss of interest in things that we typically would be interested in. For a lot of us in this depressive mood, we also may experience a change in our focus. It may be difficult to focus, or we may find ourselves hyper focusing on certain aspects of life. We may experience a change in our appetite. We may find ourselves overeating or undereating, or just having a completely different appetite altogether, whatever that may look like. And then a change in our sleep. So typically with depression, we find that people report an increase in physical fatigue, which would increase our urge and our desire to feel the need to sleep. We also would experience a desire to avoid or withdraw. And so this may be avoiding people's phone calls, avoiding even getting out of bed, avoiding taking care of ourselves, avoiding work, whatever that may look like. We really tend to isolate ourselves, which is can be dangerous and is difficult, because that just kind of keeps us in a pattern of depression. And it really feels that there's not a light at the end of the tunnel. It's hard to see an end, or it's hard to see that this can be temporary, and that it will change. So sometimes we see people may experience suicidal ideation for the first time. That may feel new to them. It may be scary not knowing what that is, or self-harming urges. So later in the presentation, we'll talk about some ways to combat that, and then how to reach out. So also the anxious mood or anxiety, that kind of looks in comparison to depressive mood, an overdrive. So we may feel restless to where we are going all the time. So a lot of times we experience intrusive thoughts or excessive worry. And so you may have heard the term like chasing a thought through a rabbit hole, or it may feel like a snowball effect where it's rolling down the hill and it's getting bigger and collecting more weight to do more damage once it reaches the end. We also can call this catastrophic thinking. And so an example that I've thought of specifically with work is, I think a lot of people are nervous about falling behind in work, or their work productivity changing because of the environment change, having to work from home. So the thought can start out as, what if I fall behind at work? Then the thought may lead to, I will get reprimanded, and then I may lose my job. And if I lose my job, I won't be able to pay my bills. And if all of that happens and I'm unable to pay my bills, I'm going to cause myself and my family to become homeless. So we see how a typical valid fear or thought, or just nerve with changing an environment and working, can lead to picturing ourselves and our family homeless. And so that's kind of where the term rabbit hole comes in, because it starts out big, we feel like we can fit through, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and there's tunnel vision, and it really seems like there's only one way, or there's only one outcome, and typically it's a catastrophe. So we want to be really careful in identifying this. Again, restlessness or irritability. A lot of times people identify anxiety with just worry, but it can also cause our mood to feel more irritable, like we are on edge. We may be more vulnerable towards feeling irritated, or what would typically be negative feeling emotions, more easily, more quickly, more frequently. Again, change of sleep. We may feel like we are becoming an insomniac. We may have difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, change in our appetite. A lot of times it's reported that there is a loss of appetite. Some other physical symptoms that we experience with an anxious mood may be nausea or heart palpitations. I know when I hear kiddos communicate anxiety, they don't necessarily know that they are communicating that or what that term means, but they'll say that it feels like a roller coaster in their tummy, or that their tummy is flipping. And then a loss of focus. Typically that overdrive kicks in, and we feel the need to multitask, and we lose focus and lose detail. It feels difficult to slow ourselves down. So I want to talk about some common thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that we experience due to these changes, and then how we challenge these things. So this idea comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, where we want to challenge our thoughts with what are facts and what we can actually observe. So with work, I've been hearing people say that they fear they will fall behind, that they may lose wages if their performance is affected negatively, or that they may feel that they are no longer needed or valued. And so ways we would challenge that with what is true, what we can observe, is that our circumstances have changed, but it's also changed for everyone. Other people are in the same boat with us, and that we're doing the best we can with the adjustment. That we want to ask, is there a threat to my job, when we begin feeling that fear? We want to identify if that is true. And then we can cope ahead to help ourselves feel like we have a backup plan, maybe make ourselves familiar with how to file for unemployment. Would we qualify for unemployment? What would be some other measures that we could financially cope? And then we also want to identify that when our thoughts are just fears, that they're fear-based. So we can challenge those with recognizing our value, what our value was prior to these changes, and that if we were not valued or needed in our job, that we would not be trusted with certain tasks. In the home, I've been hearing people say that they fear they're not a good spouse or parent, or just family member in general, not a good friend, that they may be failing their child in their education, that this is a common one I'm hearing and seeing and reading on social media, is I'm overeating, I'm gaining weight, because we are home, and just that boredom maybe. And then also the thought of, I should be able to take better care of my home because I'm here. So we want to challenge those things, like what are judgments of ourselves? And we also want to remember, when it comes to homeschooling, that most of us are not educators. And so it's situational. And that we are working from home, not just sitting around and neglecting things and tasks. Forward. Socially, we may have the thought that no one cares about us anymore, because we do feel that lack of emotional connection. We may wonder, will our relationships change when this is over for the worse? And then what if something happens to my friends or extended family, and I won't be allowed to be there for them? So I've heard of scenarios where this has happened with people who have become sick or ill and had to be hospitalized, and they cannot have family supports there with them because of the virus. So we want to remember, we're in this together. Our friends are likely experiencing the exact same thing that we are. So we're not being left out of social gatherings. They're just simply not happening for anyone. Remind ourselves how our relationships were prior, and that predicting what the future may look like is not a truth. It's not a fact. And we want to focus on what we can control in the present, not a hypothetical situation. And so I did this poll on Facebook of what are some common thoughts or fears from people who have been working from home. And I want to read one to you that I thought was very profound by a friend of mine. She said, I am working from home and I live by myself. I have to be intentional that all of my interactions with people are not only transactional. I love that. I thought that is so true. there needs to be some care and friendship in my digital interactions with people too. So we want to remember that we don't just interact with others to share or exchange transactions. So now the main deal here that I want to share, this is the main purpose, the meat of it all, tools for survival, tools for balancing. And so challenging our thoughts with facts and observations like we did prior, that comes straight from dialectical behavioral therapy. So our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are all intertwined. They can cause one another or affect one another. So that's why it's very important that we don't take thoughts for truth. We want to really examine whether they are true or not. So an example may be, I have the thought that I'm going to do poorly working from home. That may cause me to experience the emotion of anxiety. And then because of that anxiety, my action urge may be to lose focus or avoid work, to not fail, or procrastination. So we can see how that can be damaging to us. So next, we want to, just a simple phrase or a simple thought that we can change is we want to replace judgmental language such as should or should not with preferred or not preferred. And this comes from rational emotive behavior therapy. So the kind of the phrase of don't should on yourself is there. So when we express the language should or should not, that communicates that there's only one right way. And if it's not that way, then it's wrong. And that's not typically the case. We want to get out of that black and white thinking that it's not preferred I work at home, but it's not wrong if I have to as well. Practicing mindfulness, so just staying present, being in your present moment. So we can do this by grounding ourselves through our five senses. So something we can see, what can we hear, smell, touch, and taste. This can kind of ground us or pull us into our current reality, what's right in front of us. And then from dialectical behavioral therapy, the wise mind skill. So if you picture a Venn diagram where there's the two circles that kind of come together to just birth that middle circle, they both contribute to the middle circle. So one outside circle can be our emotion mind that is more impulsive. The other far outside circle would be our logic mind that is based in facts and reason. And then coming together, when we put them together and utilize them at the same time, we have our wise mind. So we want to strive for consulting with both. Both our emotions are important. They communicate to us, but we don't want to just listen to emotion. We want to look at what logic has to say to us as well to help us make the best decision possible. And then self-care is very, very important. So maybe picking up some type of physical activity, whether it's just walking or dancing at home even, something to improve our physical health. That helps increase positive hormones that our brain releases, and it gives us motivation, I believe, once we get into a rhythm. Also with self-care, keeping up with personal hygiene, I've been encouraging clients, and I've been challenging myself to do this as well. Get up, get dressed, put your makeup on, do your hair, maybe put on perfume, cologne, even though you're not going to see anyone. It just gives you a sense of preparedness. And then also other self-care activities, doing things just because they feel good, just because they are fun, or just because they're enjoyable. Make sure that you schedule something every week that you have to look forward to. So that way, when we're in the midst of a difficult day, we know, come Friday, I get to do this thing that's going to be fun. And then developing a quarantine routine. So find just some simple tasks that you can charge yourself with on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. It will give you motivation. You have a reason to get out of bed, a reason to get up. You have committed to doing certain things, and there's some self-accountability there. Next, creatively connecting with friends, with family, with even colleagues or coworkers, just for supports. So I know that there are many apps out there that allow us to do these things, and I'm so thankful for those. So Zoom is how we are connecting right now. You can set up a Zoom party with your friends. Zoom is free. There's also Netflix has developed what's called Netflix Party, which is kind of neat. You can watch the same Netflix show or movie, but kind of virtually be experiencing that with other people. So I think that is very neat. I know a lot of places of worship are going to online services so that there's still a way to connect in that sense. We don't have to completely step away from that. And then there are other apps, such as Marco Polo, GroupMe, of course, social media, just to stay connected and feel connected. And then we have actually been a part of some drive up visits. So my daughter turned 1 during the pandemic and during the social distancing quarantine regulations, and we had several people, friends and family, who drove past our house and made signs and honked and brought gifts, and we still kept that social distance, but it was nice to be with one another and celebrate one another in that way. And then lastly, it's really important that we self-validate. So remind yourself that the feelings you experience and are experiencing are fair, that they are valid, that they are real, and that they do matter. So maybe developing even just kind of a back pocket statement that you can pull out at any time and remind yourself, maybe a self mantra. So something such as like what our governor has been doing. We will get through this. We will get through this together. So something to remind yourself regularly that this is temporary. This will not last forever. So those are some tools for survival. And then seeking outside support can also be beneficial and be helpful for us if we notice that we feel we can't manage on our own. And we do notice some of those mood changes happening for us. So we definitely want to express changes to someone that we trust. Social media platforms are not the best way to do this, surprisingly. So we want to find maybe 1 or 2 people that we really do trust, whether that is a family member or just a really good friend, a pastor, a mentor, and just let them know what's going on so that someone knows what is happening and that they can check in with you. We want to remind ourselves that a crisis is always short term. It's temporary. No one lives in a crisis long term. There's typically a climax of a situation, and then we go down the other side of the hill. Contacting our regular primary care physician just to let them know what's going on with us. Medication may be an option just to help manage or help us maintain. Seeking clinical and therapeutic support. This also is very beneficial just to have an outside person that you can speak to who is non-biased and who is there just for you. And then also I've included the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It is available 24/7, and that number is located on that last bar of this slide. And lastly, here's my face and my contact information. Sarah DeLoach, there's my number, my email, and I'm located at Compass Counseling in Owensboro, Kentucky. And I would be very happy to answer any questions, should there be any after this has concluded. So I just want to say thank you to the Chamber of Commerce again for inviting me to share with you guys, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It doesn't look like we received any questions throughout the webinar today, but everyone, please know that Sarah is happy to address any questions with that contact info that she just gave. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I know this information, a lot of it really connected with me, and I know with others who are listening who really feel validated and hopefully empowered by some of those tools that you gave. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. We really appreciate that, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, everyone have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us this morning.